So I want to talk to you. I want to continue a conversation we've had as we've been driving around the country about shifting left in a DevOps culture with security in focus. So I know what it's like to shift left for functional QA, performance, and I know what that means, but is it different for security? And if so, how? Can you explain what it really means to shift left with your security testing?
It's different, but it's not at the same time. I mean, so when we think about shifting left, we just want to get as early in the cycle as possible, and that's really where we're at with all these types of things. But at the same time, from a security aspect, we would like to think that our stuff's a bit more important. It's not that your application is not necessarily going to work, it's not going to scale, it's know that you could actually have risk to your company, and that's a bigger issue. So it's not just setting up static code analysis, dynamic, open source, all that type of stuff, at the point where you're building your code, but also making sure you have a build break in place, things of that nature. So we're preventing that coding going to production if it fails your check, when you're doing your builds. So most of the focus is going to be at build time for AppSec when we think about shifting left. They develop their code, they're ready to have the static code analysis done, and when are they going to do that? When they hit build. So when they hit build, let's kick off all these processes that take place. They get all of this testing done for you, all this scanning, things of that nature, and then if high critical, however your company's policies are in that regard, vulnerability is found, it breaks that build, and those issues have to be addressed.
So you would kick off, when you push this build and you go through the CI pipe, it's going to maybe run the automated functional test that you have. And there's a tool that does that. And then it'll kick off your performance test. And does it meet those? All of these things could break. And then you get to security, you're going to have the tools that run that. Same thing, same sort of like gates, right?
Just gates.
So let's talk a little bit more about this DevOps culture, because some people call it DevOps, and then we have the term DevSecOps. Why do we have to have DevSecOps?
And I think the reason we have to have DevSecOps is because we're preventing you from going to production, for one. Just because you have a defect, that may not prevent you from going to production. We just may have to do some things to kind of fix some things or tweak some things, or maybe some things that keep you running that doesn't prevent you from going. But usually at our level of testing, you don't go. There's a risk But
why does it have to be called DevSecOps? Why can't that still be just DevOps?
Because if you take the security folks out of it, do they bring the skills to the table?
Can developers do security
Absolutely.
as good as a security person? I'm asking.
Yeah, I would say no. Absolutely. And I'm sure there's plenty of devs out there that are now mad at me, and that's fine.
They're gonna fight with
That's fine. But at the same time, that's why we're here, and we're not here to to basically mess up what they're doing. We're here to say, hey, this is an issue. Let's help you fix it, and let's even help point you to better places, better training, whatever, so you don't make that same mistake again.
Maybe get you there faster.
Absolutely.
So this gets back to something I always talk about, which is specialization. So I think you would agree, SecOps, that Sec in DevSecOps means there's a specialization in security. I feel the same way about performance. Like, why don't we call it Dev QA Perf SecOps Biz? Right? Because I think there still needs to be that. We've assumed that all of that gets captured into development, and it doesn't always do that. So I think it was really smart for security folks to say, maybe you forgot a little bit about security in here, because we've seen that every day you're hearing about breaches or an S3 bucket's exposed or something like that. So you need that specialization.
You do, and the gates are different. So, and that's a big thing too. When an issue is found, you ran through the pipeline, you have your CI pipeline, all these processes have been kicked off, an issue is found, there's auditor roles, for example. So that's a totally separate role that doesn't really exist in the dev world, and it's up to the auditor to say, is this a real issue, or is it a false positive, is it a true negative, whatever. The devs can say, no, this isn't a real issue, but it's up to the auditor to look at that issue and say, it is a real issue and it has to be fixed. And then from there, it's going to go to the business. The business is going to decide if it's a risk, all those types, all that minutia is going to happen. But, this auditor role is a much different area than what you're going to see in that functional QA kind of space. And it is a highly skilled area. They're going to have to know infrastructure. They're going to have to know network. They're going to have to know a bit about coding. It's almost like you have to be not necessarily an inch deep. You have to be a little bit deeper than an inch deep in a massive spectrum of things. And when you're a developer, you don't necessarily just have that broad of a depth of things. You're going to be focusing on what you do, which is building code.
Maybe you've convinced some people that are watching this video that actually need that, and I know that's what Saltworks does. They specialize in getting security into your DevOps pipeline. Can you talk a little bit about how you help companies do that?
Absolutely. And the great thing about us is we're agnostic of your tools. So if you like using a specific type of static code analyzer, a specific type of DAS tool, whatever, we have the specialists in those areas. We have the static guys, we have the dynamic guys, we have the open source folks, but we are really good at helping you automate that in your CI pipeline. So we're agnostic of vendors in that regard, but yet we have the skills, expertise, and we have our own developers that can help build the solutions to help you automate pretty much anything, totally independent of the tools that you have.
Awesome. Well, if you need help with that, you know who to contact about that. We'll see you on the road.